involving mainly Pakistani Muslim men. So how much has a fear of being racist hampered attempts to deal with it? And could that fear have meant children have gone on being abused? Well, joining me now is Julie Siddiqi, the chair of the Muslim-led Community Alliance Against Sexual Exploitation, set up in 2013. Some people felt at the time it was a very brave thing for you to do, to come out and to acknowledge that there was a problem. Could you have done it sooner?
I mean, possibly. It's a very, it's very complex. This whole thing is a complete mess, and as we've heard today, it just seems to be going from bad to worse, actually. I think we all need to be honest.
When Nigel Farage says race is an issue, you'd have to agree with that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but I think, what we don't want is for someone like Nigel Farage. I'm really glad that the good people of Rotherham basically stood up to him today and said, look, you're not going to come here and make a political statement out of this, out of something that's really, really quite horrific for all of us to read. And
but
I think we need to be
correct, though, here.
No, I think we need to be really careful not to say that a group of people are always, guilty of these things. And obviously, as soon as we say that, people will say, well, look, the vast majority of paedophilia, etc., is by people from different backgrounds. What I have always said is, look, where there are patterns emerging, and clearly there are, if we see lots and lots of cases, which we do seem to be seeing, with people, names like Mohammed and Khalid and Asim, then we really do need to be honest about that. And I think one of the things that's been missing in a lot of these areas has been actually speaking to real people like ourselves, people on the ground, women, and actually get them involved in some of these discussions a lot earlier. And I think that really needs to happen now as well.
But I suppose the point is that, people like Ann Cryer, as far back as 2002, were speaking to people on the ground. She was speaking to mothers on the ground who were saying their girls were being abused and exploited by mainly Pakistani men. She was also going to the police, to social services, was totally being rebuffed. She went to imams who said this has nothing to do with us, and that has been part of the problem.
Yeah, and as I say, I feel for it. I've always respected Anne and what she tried to do there, and it was very difficult for her in those days. And yes, more people should have put their hands up and said, I wouldn't align myself with those imams who shunned her away at all. And what I'm saying is that actually we need to go beyond those people, beyond maybe, if you like, the gatekeepers, to people on the ground, people like me and others who are actually willing to say, look, where there's an issue, we need to deal with this.
But I mean, would you accept that you're a minority within the Muslim community who are willing to come out and say, yes, there is a problem? Now, I acknowledge what you say about there are many men of many types involved in sexual abuse, but you've come out and said there is a specific problem.
Actually, I think
acknowledgement.
I think the more that time goes on, the more people are realising that, look, clearly there is a pattern here, and it's no benefit for any of us, particularly not vulnerable girls in any of the cities that we're talking about. They're all of our daughters and sisters, and we have a duty to care for all of them. And I think actually there's more and more people, particularly women, I would say, from all backgrounds, particularly Muslim women, who are saying, look, actually, whenever I'm in a room with Muslim women, there's a lot of people like me who absolutely accept that, look, there are challenges here, and we really need to get a grip on this. And we need to be at the forefront with people like Anne, with people like Sarah Champion from Rotherham, and actually dealing with these things as best as we can. We can't always go back.
Is now, I know you say we can't always go back, but we're not going back that far. If you look at Rotherham, which wasn't that long ago, you look at the Oxford case, Bullfinch, we hear again and again about police and social services not being willing to tackle the issue because of the sensitivities of the ethnicity.
Frankly, I'm certainly not defensive about any of this. I think, frankly, the systematic failings in Rotherham are far wider than just saying that people were not willing to take this because of sensitivities. I think there's catastrophic, it seems to me, failures, and every time another news item comes we realise it was worse than we even thought it was. So clearly it's a complete mess in Rotherham and in other places, and we really do need to acknowledge that as well. But I accept that all of us really are part of the solution, and we have to deal with this urgently as we possibly can.
Well, joining us now is Ann Cryer, the former Labour MP for Keighley, who first spoke out about this, as we've said, back in 2002. Ann Cryer, can you tell me, you obviously will find yourself in the position of agreeing with Nigel Farage today. He's come and said race is an issue. You've been saying that for a very long time.
Well, I think race is an issue in that the Biradari tends to protect their own, and therefore it becomes an issue. But really, it just happens that in these various towns, Oxford, Rochdale, Rotherham, in my case, Keighley, the lads, the men who were abusing young girls happened to be Pakistani but I won't say Muslims because they weren't practicing Muslims, and the people that I went to weren't the imams, they were actually the elders that I went to via a counsellor. And you're quite right, they did say it's nothing to do with us. If they could have just helped me, it may have avoided all of the adverse publicity that the Asian community in Keighley got at that time.
As we go down through the years from that point in the early 2000s, there were, it seems, endless people in different parts of the country all ignoring the issue or trying not to grapple with it, partly because of the issue of ethnicity. Would you say that has cost young women, that our collective, if you like, unwillingness to deal with this issue has meant that the children went on being abused?
Yeah, I mean, that's the case. But, I mean, we shouldn't sort of try to diminish the power of what it feels like to be told that you're a racist when you know that you're not a racist. In my case, I have 3 half-Indian grandchildren and a half-African grandchild. Can you imagine what it felt like to have only parts of, not all of, but parts of the Muslim, the Pakistani community in Keighley saying that I was a racist because I was raising these very difficult issues? I'm not kidding you, it was very, very difficult. It was just dreadful, actually. And I can understand people being put off from raising issues because of these dreadful allegations. I mean, let's face it.
Sorry to interrupt you, Anne.
Yeah, it's all right.
Did that create, as Dennis McShane, the Labour MP for Rotherham for a number of years suggested, a sort of culture of not wanting to rock the multicultural boat? I mean, do you accept that?
Well, yeah, I mean, you always get these people who are so politically correct, they hardly dare breathe, you know, and I mean, The Guardian, you know, and well-meaning Guardian readers were like that for a long time. Thank goodness The Guardian has changed, and they actually do report things such as this. But I have to say how very, very difficult it was for me in '02 when I was approached by those mothers. I wasn't sure whether they were from the BNP or where they were from. Now, they weren't. In fact, they were mainly Labour supporters, and that's why they came to me. But I have to say, it is extremely difficult when people are calling you a racist, they're shouting at you. I was shouted down at meetings, you know, sort of, it's all right commenting from a television studio, but when you're on the ground, when you're in a room full of Asian people who are shouting you down, it does get very frightening, and it gets very upsetting.
Julie Siddiqui, could you guarantee that if someone went to the Muslim community, as we always call it, and said, you know, this is still going on, could you guarantee they wouldn't be shouted down anymore, that they would be people who would listen and acknowledge that there's a problem?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are definitely people, like, you know, I really feel for Anne, and you can feel it in that she was very passionate about the issue, and people ignored it, and not only did they ignore it, but they, you know, spoke against her, and it's absolutely unacceptable. That kind of behaviour just has no place, really, and we really need to get over these issues and try and find the right kind of people, and I really feel for her. I would hope that wouldn't happen again. I don't think we can guarantee that it would never happen again.
No,
and clearly there are still issues in lots of places around the country where these things are still happening. So that's why we need to have a joined-up effort on, you know, in various places across the country, really.
Julie Siddiqui and Ann Cryer, I'm really sorry we have to end it there.